Hello everyone, if you're tired of the same old football analysis, you've come to the right place. We're diving deep into the biggest conspiracy in the NFL right now, and you won't want to miss a second of it. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you like this kind of no-holds-barred, authentic breakdown, hit that subscribe button and help us grow this channel. What is going on, everybody? Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just another football story. This isn't about touchdowns or interceptions or wins and losses. No, this is about betrayal, sabotage, ego, and a digital breadcrumb trail that has just blown the roof off the entire Cleveland Browns organization. We're talking about a conspiracy that's been hiding in plain sight. And it took just one single tap on a screen, one digital, like one moment of raw honesty from a $230 million quarterback to expose the whole rotten operation, the $230 million whistleblower. Ladies and gentlemen, Deshaun Watson, sitting on the injured reserve list, recovering from an Achilles injury that was supposed to keep him quiet and out of the headlines, just became the most unexpected whistleblower in National Football League history. He just told on his own head coach Kevin Stefanski, and in doing so, he confirmed what millions of Browns fans, football analysts, and social media sleuths have been screaming about for months. Kevin Stefanski is systematically destroying quarterback careers in Cleveland, and his latest victim is none other than the most electrifying young talent in football, Shedeur Sanders. This story has everything: corporate sabotage, ego clashes, a quarterback graveyard that stretches back years, a social media smoking gun, and at the center of it all, a 5th-round draft pick who might just be the most talented player on the entire roster, rotting away on the bench while his coach runs an offense so conservative, so pathetically afraid of its own shadow that it makes high school football look aggressive by comparison. So let me take you on a journey, because this story requires context, it requires receipts, and it requires us to connect dots that the mainstream media either can't see or refuses to acknowledge. We're going to Cleveland, Ohio, that factory of sadness, that home of broken dreams and shattered quarterback careers. And we're going to expose exactly what's been happening behind those closed doors. The Cleveland Browns just came off what the box score would call a dominant victory, 31-6 over the Miami Dolphins. On paper, it looks impressive. The defense absolutely suffocated Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins' offense. The stadium was rocking despite the cold, miserable Cleveland rain. Fans left First Energy Stadium thinking their team had turned a corner, that maybe, just maybe, this season could be salvaged. But I'm here to tell you right now that victory is a smokescreen. That win is a magic trick designed to distract you from what's really happening. That scoreboard is the magician's right hand waving in the air while the left hand performs the real deception. Because while everyone was celebrating that 31-point performance, while the Browns were patting themselves on the back for embarrassing Mike McDaniel's offense, the real story was happening in the shadows on encrypted apps, in private group chats, on social media platforms, and it involves one of the most expensive, most controversial, and most silenced quarterbacks in the entire league, Deshaun Watson. Now, we all know the official narrative. Watson's been on injured reserve ever since he tore his Achilles. He's been a ghost, a $230 million specter haunting the hallways of the Browns facility, barely mentioned in press conferences, rarely shown on television broadcasts, essentially erased from the conversation despite being the single largest financial investment in franchise history. And I've been saying from the beginning, I still believe Deshaun Watson will play again this season. I don't think his story in Cleveland is over, not by a long shot, but we're not here to talk about his Achilles tendon or his recovery timeline or when he might return to the field. We're here to talk about his actions, his digital footprint, the moves he's been making online while he's supposed to be quietly rehabbing and staying out of the spotlight. Because even though the Browns picked up that big win against Miami, even though the defense looked elite and the running game was effective, something far more explosive was happening simultaneously, something that has the potential to tear this organization apart from the inside. Deshaun Watson just exposed Kevin Stefanski, and he did it in the most modern, most undeniable way possible. He liked a TikTok video, the TikTok nuclear bomb. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. A TikTok like? That's the big story. That's the scandal. Yes. Absolutely yes. Because in today's NFL, where every player's social media activity is monitored by teams, agents, public relations firms, and millions of fans, a like isn't just a like. It's a statement. It's a position. It's a message sent to the world about where you stand on an issue. And when that like comes from a quarterback who's being paid more guaranteed money than any player in NFL history, when it comes during a week where his team just won, but the quarterback controversy is raging hotter than ever when it endorses a fan video that explicitly calls out his head coach for being a career-destroying fraud that, becomes a nuclear bomb. Let me set the stage for yesterday's game, because understanding what happened on the field is crucial to understanding why Watson's social media activity is so significant. This was supposed to be the game. Everyone had it circled on their calendars. The fans, the media, the entire football world was watching Cleveland with one question on their minds. Would we finally see Shedeur Sanders take the field? The setup was perfect. Dillon Gabriel, the starting quarterback who Cleveland drafted ahead of Sanders, had been struggling. His performance had been mediocre at best, uninspiring at worst. The word on the street, the whispers coming from inside the building, was that Gabriel was on the shortest leash in NFL history. One bad half, one interception, one fumbled snap, and he was done. The coaching staff would have no choice but to pull him and give Shedeur his shot. The crowd was primed and ready to start the Shedeur chants at the first sign of trouble. The pressure was mounting. The moment seemed inevitable. The signs were everywhere. Deion Sanders Jr., Shedeur's brother and closest confidant, flew to Cleveland for the game. Think about that for a second. Bucky flew from wherever he was to cold, rainy Cleveland, Ohio. Now, I'm not saying that's definitive proof that Shedeur was going to play, but come on. Use your brain. Use your common sense. Why else would he make that trip? This was supposed to be a historic moment, the debut of the most hyped fifth-round pick in NFL history. But Kevin Stefanski had other plans. The so-called offensive guru, the man who's won Coach of the Year twice somehow, the man with the laminated play sheet who's convinced half the football world that he knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball. He pulled off the most blatant act of sabotage I've ever witnessed in professional sports. He choked his own offense to death. He strangled it. He suffocated it. He designed a game plan so conservative, so terrified of putting his quarterback in any situation where he might actually have to throw the football that it bordered on parody. The Browns ran the ball, and then they ran it again, and then when they were absolutely forced to pass, they threw checkdowns and screen passes that went nowhere, and then they ran the ball some more. Stefanski wasn't coaching to win, he was coaching not to lose. More importantly, he was coaching specifically to prevent Dillon Gabriel from screwing up badly enough to justify pulling him. Let me give you the stats, because the numbers tell a story that's absolutely damning. Dillon Gabriel, the starting quarterback in a game his team won by 25 points, completed 13 of 18 passes for 116 yards. Read that again. 116 yards in an entire four-quarter NFL game in the year 2025, with modern passing rules that favor offenses, in a game they dominated from start to finish. Gabriel threw the ball only 18 times total, and he didn't throw a single touchdown pass. For context, Tua Tagovailoa, playing for the losing team that got absolutely demolished, threw the ball 23 times. The losing quarterback had more pass attempts than the winning quarterback. That's not a game plan. That's not offensive strategy. That's surrender. That's cowardice. That's a head coach so terrified of his quarterback making a mistake that he'd rather win ugly with 116 passing yards than risk actually opening up the offense. And here's the thing, Dillon Gabriel hasn't turned the ball over yet. Not a single interception, not a single lost fumble. And do you know why? It's not because he's been exceptionally careful or smart with the football. It's because Kevin Stefanski has bubble wrapped him. He's put training wheels on his quarterback. He's designed an offense so simple, so risk-averse, so utterly devoid of anything that could possibly go wrong that it's essentially impossible for Gabriel to make a mistake, because he's never put in a position where he has to make a real decision. Why would Stefanski do this? Why would he intentionally handicap his own offense? Why would he run a 1970s ground and pound attack in an era where the league has never been more pass friendly? The answer is as obvious as it is infuriating, because he's terrified of what comes next. He knows that the second Gabriel throws that first interception, the second he makes that critical mistake, the stadium will turn on him. The fans will start chanting for Shedeur. The media will start asking why the more talented quarterback is sitting on the bench. The experiment will be over, and Stefanski will be forced to play the kid he clearly has no interest in playing. So instead of letting his offense breathe, instead of taking advantage of the weapons he has, instead of giving his team the best chance to score points and win games convincingly, Stefanski has chosen to protect his own ego and his own stubborn quarterback preferences by essentially removing the quarterback position from the equation entirely. He'd rather win 13-10 with 100 yards passing than win 42-35 with 350 yards from Shedeur Sanders. It's the most transparent, most cowardly act of coaching self-preservation I've ever seen. And that brings us to the bombshell. That brings us to Deshaun Watson and the TikTok that's now going viral across every social media platform. That brings us to the moment where a $230 million franchise quarterback decided he couldn't stay silent anymore. Here's what happened. A Browns fan who goes by the name Chad and the Dumb Browns Fans posted a TikTok video on October 9th that was essentially a rant about Kevin Stefanski's offensive system. In the video, Chad makes a point that's been echoing around Browns fan circles for years now. Every single quarterback who plays for Kevin Stefanski looks bad, and then they leave Cleveland and suddenly find themselves again and play well somewhere else. Chad specifically mentions Baker Mayfield, who struggled mightily under Stefanski, got run out of Cleveland, and then went to Tampa Bay, where he's played some of the best football of his career. He mentions Joe Flacco, who just came off an injured reserve stint himself and immediately looked better in his Week 7 performance than he ever did in Cleveland. The pattern is undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming. Quarterback after quarterback enters the Kevin Stefanski system looking promising and leaves looking broken, only to resurrect their careers elsewhere. In the video, Chad poses what he calls a genuine question. Are we sure Deshaun Watson is even bad? Every quarterback Kevin Stefanski has had is not good, and then they go to a different team and find themselves again and are awesome. It's a fair question. It's a question that goes to the heart of what's happening in Cleveland. Is it the quarterbacks who are the problem, or is it the system? Is it the players, or is it the coach? And then the bombshell dropped. Deshaun Watson favored the video. He didn't just watch it and scroll past. He didn't accidentally tap the screen. He saw a fan video explicitly calling out his head coach, saying that Stefanski ruins quarterback careers, suggesting that maybe Watson's struggles aren't entirely his fault. And Watson hit the favorite button. He digitally co-signed it. He put his stamp of approval on it. He sent a message to anyone paying attention. This fan is speaking the truth. The fan who posted the video was stunned. He went back on social media to share the screenshot showing that Deshaun Watson had favored his content. He said, "Wow, now does that mean Deshaun agrees? Does Deshaun just like me crashing out like I always do?" I don't know. All I do know is that every quarterback that leaves Kevin Stefanski goes off to be a better quarterback. There's never a dull moment in Cleveland. Let's be absolutely clear about what just happened here. This isn't some random backup linebacker liking a fan post. This isn't a practice squad player expressing frustration. This is the franchise quarterback, the player the Browns mortgaged their entire future to acquire, the man who's supposed to be the face of the organization for the next several years, publicly signaling that he agrees with a fan criticism of his own head coach. That's unprecedented. That's explosive. That's the kind of thing that can tear a locker room apart and get people fired. Now, some people might try to dismiss this. They'll say Watson was just defending himself, that he liked the video because it suggests he's not the problem, that it's just about his own legacy and reputation. And sure, that's part of it. Watson has every reason to be frustrated with how his tenure in Cleveland has gone. He's been criticized relentlessly, he's dealt with controversy, he's struggled on the field, and now he's injured, watching from the sidelines as the same dysfunctional offensive system continues to fail with yet another quarterback. But here's where this connects to the bigger story, the story that matters most to everyone watching this unfold, Shedeur Sanders. Because Deshaun Watson isn't just in some remote location rehabbing his injury. He's in that building, he's in those meetings, he's on that sideline during games. He sees everything that we see, and probably a lot more that we don't. He sees the most electrifying college quarterback in recent memory, a kid with exceptional arm talent and remarkable poise being forced to hold a clipboard and watch a quarterback throw for 116 yards in a blowout victory. He sees a head coach who's actively designing his offense to avoid playing his most talented player. Watson sees Kevin Stefanski running that same career-killing system that made Baker Mayfield look ordinary, that made Joe Flacco look washed, that's made Watson himself look like a shadow of his Pro Bowl form, and now he's watching it happen to another victim, another young quarterback whose career is being stifled before it even begins. He's watching Shedeur Sanders get the same treatment, being buried on the depth chart not because of his talent or performance, but because of coaching ego and organizational dysfunction. And Watson couldn't stay silent anymore. He couldn't hold it in. He couldn't watch another quarterback career get destroyed by the same system that's destroyed so many others. But he also couldn't come out and say it directly. He couldn't hold a press conference. He couldn't tweet it himself. That would be too obvious, too confrontational, too much of a direct challenge to the coaching staff. So he did the next best thing. He found a fan who was brave enough to say what everyone was thinking, and he gave that fan the ultimate cosign. He favored the video. He sent up the signal flare. He let the world know this is real, this is true, and someone on the inside agrees with what you're seeing. The implications of this are absolutely massive. This confirms everything that Browns fans and neutral observers have been saying for months now. Kevin Stefanski is sabotaging Shedeur Sanders, and he's doing it purposely, deliberately, and systematically. Hook 3. Why is Stefanski sabotaging Shedeur? The question is why? What possible motivation could a head coach have for intentionally keeping his most talented quarterback on the bench while running an offense that barely utilizes the passing game? There are a few theories, and all of them paint Stefanski in an extremely unflattering light. The first theory is that he knows the writing is on the wall for his job. He knows he's probably getting fired at the end of the season regardless of what happens. So, he's decided to go down with his guys, the players he chose, the players he developed, rather than giving in to the player that management or ownership forced on him. It's ego-driven self-destruction, burning the house down on his way out the door. The second theory is simpler, but equally damning. Stefanski just doesn't like Shedeur Sanders. He doesn't like the hype. He doesn't like the attention. He doesn't like having Dayon Primetime, Sanders' son, on his roster with all the media circus that entails. He's a self-proclaimed non-nonsense coach who wants a non-nonsense quarterback, even if that quarterback can only produce 116 yards in a 4-quarter game. His ego is so massive, so fragile, so unable to accept anything that challenges his authority that he would rather lose his way than win with a player who represents everything he's not comfortable with. The third theory, and perhaps the most disturbing, is that Stefanski genuinely believes his system is more important than individual talent. He's convinced himself that if he just runs his offense exactly the way he envisions it with a quarterback who does exactly what he's told without questions or creativity, that he can win games. It's coaching arrogance taken to its extreme logical conclusion. He'd rather have a mediocre quarterback who follows orders than a great quarterback who might occasionally color outside the lines. Regardless of which theory is correct, or whether it's some combination of all three, the result is the same. Shedeur Sanders is being systematically prevented from showing what he can do. He's being buried on the depth chart despite being the most talented quarterback on the roster. He's watching from the sideline as his head coach runs an offense so conservative that it makes prevent defense look aggressive. And now, thanks to Deshaun Watson's digital breadcrumb, we have confirmation from inside the building that this isn't just fan speculation or media narrative. This is real, this is happening, and someone who's been living it firsthand just told the whole world about it. Let's also talk about the timing of Watson's because that matters too. This wasn't some random middle of the week social media scrolling. This came right after the Miami game, right after Stefanski ran that ultra-conservative game plan, right after Dylan Gabriel threw for 116 yards, right after Deion Sanders Jr. flew to Cleveland expecting to see his brother play, only to watch him stand on the sideline for 4 quarters. Watson saw all of that unfold, saw the obvious sabotage happening in real time, and decided that was the moment to send his message. The mainstream media is gonna try to bury this story. They're gonna say it was an accidental, that Watson was just scrolling through TikTok and his thumb slipped, that we're reading too much into a simple social media interaction. Don't believe it for a second. Professional athletes, especially ones who've been in the league as long as Watson and who've dealt with the level of media scrutiny he's experienced, are extraordinarily careful about their social media activity. They know that every post, every like, every follow is going to be analyzed and scrutinized. When Watson hit that favorite button, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what message he was sending, and he did it anyway because the truth needed to come out. This also speaks to a larger pattern that's been developing in Cleveland for years now. The Browns have become a quarterback graveyard, a place where promising signal callers go to see their careers die. Baker Mayfield came to Cleveland as the #1 overall pick, full of swagger and confidence. And by the time he left, he looked broken and defeated. Deshaun Watson, a 3-time Pro Bowler who was one of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the league in Houston, has looked like a shell of himself in Cleveland. Joe Flacco, who had a brief renaissance moment, ultimately couldn't sustain any success in Stefanski's system. The pattern is undeniable, and now Shedeur Sanders is at risk of becoming the latest casualty. What makes the situation even more frustrating is that we've seen Shedeur play. We watched him at Colorado under the brightest spotlight imaginable. We saw him throw for over 3,000 yards with an impressive touchdown to interception ratio. We saw him handle pressure, make throws from different arm angles, process information quickly, and lead his team in hostile road environments. We saw him demonstrate all the qualities you want in a franchise quarterback. And now he's being told to sit down, shut up, and wait his turn behind a quarterback who can't break 120 yards passing in a blowout win. The most damning evidence of Stefanski's sabotage is how he's handled the game plan in situations where logic would dictate giving Shedeur a chance. Yesterday's game against Miami was perfect for getting a backup quarterback some experience. The Browns were dominating, the defense was playing lights out, they built a comfortable lead. Those are exactly the circumstances where you'd normally see a team give their young quarterback some reps, let him get his feet wet, build some confidence, and see what he can do in a low-pressure situation. But Stefanski refused. He kept Dillon Gabriel in the game for all 4 quarters, had him throw a grand total of 18 passes, and made absolutely certain that Shedeur never got close to the field. That's not accident, that's not game flow, that's not sticking with the hot hand or riding the momentum. That's deliberate, intentional exclusion. That's a coach making a statement. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care what the fans want. I don't care what makes sense strategically. You are not playing for me. It's coaching malpractice wrapped in stubbornness and ego. The locker room dynamics have to be absolutely toxic right now. Players aren't blind. They see the same things we see. They watch Shedeur in practice every single day. They know what kind of arm talent he has, what kind of leader he is, how hard he works, and they're watching their head coach deliberately keep that talent on the bench while running an offense that's so limited it makes their jobs harder. Wide receivers want to catch passes, not watch their team run the ball 40 times a game. They want a quarterback who can stretch the field, attack defenses vertically, and give them opportunities to make plays. Shedeur can do all of that. Dillon Gabriel, based on what we've seen, cannot or will not. There's also the generational and cultural element that can't be ignored. Shedeur Sanders represents a new wave of quarterback, confident and media savvy, unafraid to show personality, connected to younger fans through social media and modern culture. He's the son of one of the most charismatic athletes in sports history. He carries himself with swagger and style. And Kevin Stefanski, by all accounts, is the complete opposite. Buttoned up, conservative, old school, uncomfortable with flash or attention. That personality clash was probably inevitable, but it shouldn't result in the coach actively sabotaging his own team just to avoid dealing with a player who doesn't fit his preferred mold. Deshaun Watson's digital endorsement of the criticism against Stefanski also raises serious questions about the coach's future in Cleveland. How can you continue to coach a team when your franchise quarterback, even from injured reserve, is publicly signaling that he doesn't believe in your system? How can you maintain authority in the locker room when players know that even Watson thinks you're the problem? How can the front office continue to support you when the evidence keeps mounting that quarterback after quarterback looks better elsewhere than they do under your coaching? The Browns organization now faces an absolutely critical decision point. They can continue to pretend everything is fine, keep Stefanski in place, let him continue running his conservative offense, and watch as Shedeur Sanders' rookie season gets completely wasted while he holds a clipboard. Or they can acknowledge what's become painfully obvious. Kevin Stefanski's system doesn't work for developing quarterbacks. He's actively sabotaging their most promising young talent, and changes need to be made immediately before permanent damage is done to another career. The saddest part of this entire situation is that Shedeur Sanders has done everything right. He's kept his mouth shut publicly, he's worked hard in practice, he's been a good teammate, he hasn't complained to the media or thrown anyone under the bus, he's handled being a 5th round pick with grace and maturity, he's accepted his role on the depth chart without public protest, and his reward for all that professionalism has been watching an offense that barely functions while knowing he could probably do better if given the chance. The other subplot here that makes this even more interesting is what happens when Deshaun Watson does eventually return from injury. Does he come back to the same dysfunctional system? Does he have to play for a coach he's now publicly suggested is sabotaging quarterbacks? How does that relationship work moving forward? Or does Watson's social media activity essentially force the Browns' hand to make coaching changes before he returns? The timeline of Watson's recovery and the timeline of potential coaching staff changes could end up intersecting in fascinating ways. This story is going to dominate the headlines for the rest of the week, and mark my words, this TikTok like is the beginning of the end for Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. The franchise quarterback has spoken, and the message is clear. The system is the problem, the coach is the problem, and something has to change now before the $230 million investment and the most promising young talent on the roster are both permanently damaged. We are watching the internal collapse of the Cleveland Browns all over a single, undeniable digital tap. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with Watson? Is Stefanski really destroying quarterback careers? And is Shedeur Sanders his next victim? Drop a comment, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe so we can keep bringing you the real stories behind the headlines. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.